3, 2, 1, go.
About a day ago, TV's Jon Stewart stood before the United States Congress and berated them, essentially, for their belligerence and their apparent, seeming lack of care for the victims of, not the victims of the 9/11 terror attack, but the victims of the aftermath, the cleanup, the 9/11 cleanup crews, who had worked on the sites and needed a renewal to their medical benefits. You see, I found this very interesting. I found it very telling because I see more of this in our distant future. I see this only really getting worse. The good working people of America being turned away, essentially, by the people who they trusted, who they put in power, using their own efforts and their votes. I think that. What?
Isn't there a big difference between people who clean up 9/11 crews versus people like the working class, like when people who work at McDonald's?
They're still considered working class.
McDonald's boys clean 9/11, don't you know?
Well, they clean up the kitchen.
Yeah.
The McDonald's.
Yeah.
My dad's friend did a cleanup, 9/11 cleanup, and ended up with lung cancer and got a settlement out of it.
Yeah.
That's big money.
Oh yeah, they did pretty well off of it, but he's sick nonetheless. So
Yeah. The point I'm trying to make is that this is. I feel as if this is just gonna keep happening. It's a tell. That eventually the wrath of the working class isn't gonna be quelled by just meetings and congressional hearings and whatnot. Eventually it's just gonna go from tears like the ones that Jon Stewart had to just pure anger. It's in the distant future. The future is to be feared.
We should introduce ourselves before we get into conversations like this.
Tales from Bottom of the Ocean. I am Austin Andrews.
Mike Kemp.
He's been here for
been
here for 39 weeks and is still forgetting his name. And we have a guest here.
And I'm Mike Massetti, special guest today.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem.
I brought Mike over because in this part 2 of the working class struggles, I found him to be an exemplary example of a true working class fella. He has a lot of interesting stories, and we're gonna discuss some things about the American working class. So why don't you kind of take us through your
Well, we actually met. I was doing an oil change on your car. I work for one of the major oil change companies locally in Uniondale, actually, and I started off as a technician there about a year ago, and pretty much have, we have 2 different types of work that we do in the shop. You can either work on the top side or you can work on the bottom side in the pit. So you're either working on the hood, in the pit. So you're either working on the hood of the car with the customer, dealing directly with customer service, or you're working underneath the car. I typically like to work down underneath the car, so I don't have to deal with the client as much. But on that particular day, I was upstairs and we had, kind of hit it off in a conversation about philosophy, if you remember.
Yeah, I remember 100%.
But to make a long story short, it was a long road for me into that position, and we were kind of talking earlier about familial connections and how when I was younger I was kind of handed a couple of opportunities and got into the workforce and kind of thought that I was set, but maybe didn't take those opportunities as seriously as I should have. So when those kind of quick connections fell through, I was left kind of scrambling to set myself up, and that's kind of where I'm at now, kind of at Valvoline. Started from the bottom there and just kind of trying to work my way up.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it's all about, I guess. I mean, that's what it's perceived to be. The idea that,
separates the American working class from the different, communism.
From, say, the working class of the USSR, who were essentially, mandated to work. It's if you didn't, there was a point in the USSR where if you didn't show up to work, you were essentially get sent to prison. It's, obviously, it's not like this here, where you really could, I guess at whatever point, obviously there's some points where you have to.
Well, it's
Okay.
It's similar in the sense that if you don't go to work here, you'll almost end up in a self-made prison where you can't take care of yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is something that that I've experienced as well. When I was speaking before about not taking the working opportunities as seriously as I should have, I've definitely experienced it, the consequences of not not having the things that go along with having a job that gives you like a good wage, like having food, shelter, like things like that. I guess like the perks that come along with communism is that like those things are gonna be there for you.
Like taking care of you, taking care
Yeah.
of.
Ideally.
The quality typically is not superb. It's at least there for you to reap from,
Now, what I think the cool thing about America though is like you can take yourself as far as you want in any position. Like I was telling you before, I was at Valvoline. I worked at Mercedes-Benz, and I started there as a valet. And this was about 3 years ago. And I follow like certain like simple like spiritual principles and like very simple like working principles. Like you show up on time, like well dressed, like you speak with manners, and like you can move up in any job. I went from a valet to then a technician and then to a service advisor, like over 3 years there.
Yeah.
So like I guess that's the perks of living in America. You can come up as far as you want to go. Communism, you're just kind of stuck.
Yeah. I mean, for obviously we haven't ever worked in communism. I mean, we haven't ever been in a communist system, but I feel as if that is something that is a really big concern. Like I was watching this one guy, this one this kind of like YouTuber called Tim Pool, and he asked a pretty decent question. I think like he was talking to like the communists in like a communist party in Britain, and he was saying like, okay, how about like what if he's basically saying like the cool thing about capitalism in a way is that you can really just exchange social credit money to have something done for you. Like he's having some guy renovate his van so he can use it as a sort of mobile sort of media outpost. And he was saying how, like, what if I wanted to do this in under communism? Like, and they would say, they basically told him, like, okay, so you'd have to go to the factory and tell them that you want to, say, like, build a car. It's like, first of all, I don't know anything about building a car. Second of all, what's the system going to be in place? And they didn't really give him an answer. But he was essentially saying is the division of labor is really interesting, because what you can do is you don't necessarily need to be a specialist. You can give somebody the money that they believe that they're worth. Because typically people who do this, they're sort of self-made, and then they can just build what they want, or rather they can do what you want almost to a T using the skills that they have that you didn't have. You know what I mean? Or rather, despite the skills that you didn't have. So I mean, I don't want to necessarily like
talk about communism the whole time.
Well, yeah, I'm saying I don't want to be too much of a bootlicker, because like I don't want to. I'm not trying to be like, hey, screw communism, love capitalism, love your situation, because when I want
capitalism's objectively better.
I guess. See, there's people who really don't believe that, and
those people are taking it for granted because they don't understand. Like, what would you be doing if you weren't working? Like, you're gonna have to work either way. There's no way around it. We don't live in cave times anymore. You have to work, and even they had to work technically. So, like, you might as well be able to move up and make more money than someone else if you do a better job.
Yeah.
Or else if anything, communism's bootlicking.
Maybe.
You ever hear that book called Tribe?
I think, isn't that what's that?
I've never heard of it. Let him explain.
Yeah, it was just kind of saying that like it was just kind of saying that like like the setup that we have now like is unnatural. Like you're basically not a human being isn't meant to be going to a job from 9 to 5 every day. Like it's it's a lot. You're supposed to be with like your immediate family unit, like living in nature. Like I don't want to say like hunting and gathering, but it's a very unnatural like system that we have set up.
It goes against. I guess he's making a case that it goes against human nature.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's what causes I think that's why like anxiety and depression and like a lot of things like that run rampant, and a lot of people are left dissatisfied with their lives. Is because like you're waking up doing something you don't necessarily want to do every day, and like how do you find passion in life when you're doing something like that? And it's like I was explaining to you guys before, it's like I've had these good career opportunities, like the Teamsters 814 union at Nassau Coliseum, Mercedes-Benz. I was a manager at Ace Hardware, but it's like, why did these things continue to fall through? It's because like something inside is not fulfilled when you're working a job that you don't want to be working every day.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a balance of like maybe understanding that the only way to get into a position where you could do what you want in life is to like work hard and get through these crappy times now.
Well, how? Oh, sorry. I was gonna ask, like, well, why? How is it? Like, that's one of the main contentions with communism. Like, one of the big phrases in communism is to each according to their need to something. I don't even know.
I mean, in a way, all right, I think what you're meaning to say, like, communism in a way is like the way you describe like humans living like with your family and like doing.
Well,
but you're still doing a job.
No,
you don't
hold on. No, what the main phrase is that like the goal is to create a scarcity-free society to where everybody can just busy themselves with, like, say, loving, like, you know, basically being creative and et cetera, et cetera. And I'll tell you one thing, like, in the sort of more westernmost communist blocs, some of that actually did work. Like, there was a large art movements in art and expression and et cetera. There was still the, you know, the Strozzi, and you couldn't really speak out against the party and everything like that. It was its own kind of oppression, but it was still like comparable to, I guess, the oppression that we had, you know, nowadays. Because like people, they really did in some ways busy themselves with that sort of art. But that's not really what I wanted to ask you. What I wanted to ask you is that I wanted to ask you like, how is it that you achieve life fulfillment when you fulfilling your life doesn't always seem so profitable, you know? Like, if it, like, I guess that ties into the question if the profit motive is immoral, because often it makes you do things that you don't want to do, you know?
I think you just, I mean, I can't speak for anyone else, but for me personally, I know that I have an intention set down the road where all of this struggle can be worth it in the end. Like, I think that if I have like a dream set, like I want to be an art broker. That's my dream. So like,
cool.
somewhere down the road, I want all this to lead to that, and I know that that's not possible without this. Like I was saying before. I don't have anything handed to me from the family, like no car, no apartment, no job, like nothing like that to fall back on. And like you were speaking before, like the McDonald's workers, man, I feel for people like that. Like, imagine going to work every day and not making a living wage. I mean, I feel for myself, man. I don't make a living wage. I work a 40-hour week. It takes me almost, well, before I moved into this new apartment last night closer to work, it was taking me a 2-hour commute every day with a 10-hour shift, and at the end of the week still not being able to like pay rent, eat food, like, you know, buy like new clothes. You know, you get by, I have what I need, but I'm saying like I'm not like really living, you know what I mean?
You survive,
for how hard
yeah.
I'm working, bro, like you're not really living.
I guess it's like a necessary evil though, because at least we could like move up, like you said, we could still move up out of that position, like at something.
Yeah, and exactly.
Like to suffer to like end up getting what you actually wanted.
Well,
like you wouldn't know you really wanted anything if it was handed to you.
I think it creates the perspective to like exactly to know what you don't want. You know?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, like that's one thing I always told people is that, like, listen, I don't really know what I want, but I know I definitely what I do where I don't want to be.
Because like the grass is always greener on the other side, but then you get on the other side and you realize like maybe this wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Like it doesn't speak to the true nature of life itself, where it's just like everything is kind of falling into place, and you're not really sure where you're gonna end up, but you can kind of do minute things to make sure you end up at least somewhere.
The thing with the true nature thing though is like, yeah, it's in our nature to just want to be with our families and like that kind of thing, but then like how worth would your life really be if that's all you were doing?
How worth it is life if that's what you're doing, you mean?
Yeah, like how could you really build up any, like, yeah, I agree with that, like humans naturally do want to like not really have to work a 9 to 5, but I think it's also kind of in human nature to want to be in a higher position than other people.
You know, I have this.
So I guess you would do that. I guess you would do that like in nature just by being bigger or stronger, but that's just not what we live in.
I feel like the environment that we're in now, like it breeds more of the ego and like that family environment that I was talking about before with like the tribe. That's like a spiritual environment.
Well, can you explain what you think our current environment is?
In the with the workforce.
Yeah.
I mean, my perspective is it's tough out there if you don't have familial connections.
The family.
You don't even have to specify the workforce because the workforce is our civilization.
Yeah, it's comprised.
You don't even have to
solely
like
of it,
say
yeah.
just the workforce because that really is like it's the force behind everything.
I guess, like, how do you see like the way that it is set up? Like, do you feel like it's really is just set up against you, or is it set up?
No, I think it's up. I think it's up to you to to really to get it going, man. You have to do it on your own. If you don't have a hookup from somebody, like if you don't have your dad that's going to get you into a union, or you don't have a friend who has a business that can get you a job, like you don't have a connection, or you've used those connections, like, I don't know. That's the beautiful thing about America, though. Like, right? Like,
is it really bad to have those familial connections?
No, it's like awesome if you have.
Yeah, because someone in your family down the road worked so hard for you to have it.
I would want nothing more for my kids than to be able to leave them in a position where they have a setup, like where they can step into something that I've created for them.
I'm sorry, I was gonna say that's the big motivation, isn't it? Like the believing that you have a vested interest in the future.
But it's kind of inherently flawed, because a lot of people who do have those connections end up taking it for granted.
Oh yeah, I was about to say, generational wealth doesn't last like so let's say I had like billions of dollars, like it would, like that billions wouldn't last the next two generations, essentially.
Right,
that's
so
where it
like
usually
I said
ends off.
before, like my dad got me into the union when I was 18 at Nassau Coliseum, and that was $22.50 an hour. Like, that was pretty good money for a 19-year-old kid. I was lined up to probably make $60,000 that year.
That's still pretty good money for a 19-year-old, really.
So when I took that for granted, and then that fell apart, and then throughout like a couple other failed like career opportunities, like I gained the perspective that, like, wow, like I'm not getting handed anything anymore. Like, I have to do this on my own. Yeah. So that's where like this journey at Valvoline really started. I mean, I guess at Ace Hardware it really started, where like I had to learn hardware, electrical, plumbing, paint, how to cut keys, how to run the whole store, like within 6 months. And then I kind of got thrown into the fire and like realized that you could take any job as far as you want to go, no matter what it is. Like I said, I stepped into Mercedes as a valet. 3 years later, I was a service advisor there. Like, that's the beauty of America, man. You show up at your job on time and like make connections with your boss and like other people at work. You can do whatever you want to do.
You also got to learn a lot of skills. That's pretty cool, honestly.
I was gonna ask, like, Jesus. I
think it is in human nature to want to learn things and have skills. Because that's what separates us from animals, really. Like, our skills. You couldn't ask a fish to make a key.
I'm trying to remember the question, Adam.
I just think that the skills that are like valued in this day and age, as compared to like, I'm not really sure what time period that book Tribe that we were talking about was speaking of, but let's call it like before like we settled the plains, basically, like when people were still living in, like when Native Americans were still living.
Yeah, they're teepees.
Yeah, exactly.
The Plains Indians. Yeah.
Exactly. I just think that like the way people were developing is different. I think the ego gets developed in our workforce.
Yeah.
It's about possessions and money and your car and what,
like, if you have better possessions,
you have what house you're in. Like, I watched my parents literally take a house that was paid off when I was in my senior year of high school, and we moved down the block into a house that was more expensive but smaller and uglier because it was on a better block, and because people would view us as like a maybe, like a
higher standing.
Yeah, exactly. Like, wow, like, they're of a higher class because they don't live across the street from a parking lot, because that's where my other house was. So like, it's sad that people overextend themselves and live outside their means, and like the wages that their job in the workforce is providing them just to like try and impress other people, and I don't think that kind of stuff really mattered as much when like it was really more about like taking care of your immediate family unit, and like maybe the men were hunting and gathering and the women were making the clothing, and like the children had their own little roles, but like the jobs were different, but everybody's still fulfilled at the end of the day and happy.
That's true.
Yeah, there's a bit of a disconnect as the society becomes more developed. Like, people become arguably, they stop valuing things like family or children. They more value things like status and possessions.
You have to make your own rule, which in a sense is like, that's like an increased version of free will, in a sense, because you get to create your own rule. Like back in the day, like those roles that the family operated was like a necessity. Like, a man had to go hunt, the woman had to cook, raise the kids had to, like, I think they did stupid little chores and stuff. But like the point is, like now that isn't really necessary, you have to figure out your own role in society as a whole. Like you take more place in society, kind of, which is a burden. It's free will, but it's a burden.
Like you're more free to, as we become more developed, you're more free to just like put yourself on the map. So to
I
speak.
mean, but
Yeah.
what would we be doing if we weren't working? Like,
Exactly.
I get. Well, let me tell you about an interesting experiment. It's called the. Well, I don't know.
You
What
better
it's
talk
called.
about that damn t-shirts again.
No, Jesus, let me finish, Mike. Oh, it's the. I guess you can just look up like mice post scarcity experiment, but it's basically like the post. It's like they set up a post scarcity world for mice, and it essentially they all just died out. Like they developed severe mental disorders. And there was a group of mice that would literally, all they would do, they wouldn't procreate, they would just groom themselves. And eventually they all died out. The experiment just fell apart.
well, isn't that kind of like what's going on in our society in a way? Like,
Population is declining in some countries. Not
Like
I
a
don't
lot
think
of
this
first world-
country, but like in Japan it is. Because they're being overworked.
the populations that are holding up our birth rates are, I believe, South Americans, like Hispanics.
Because I was reading about Japan. Like I know this is in America, but it is interesting because we're talking about work. Like in Japan, you think the workforce is bad. Here in Japan, the workforce is like, it's nonstop. It is your life. And population rates are declining really hard, and like they wonder why. It's because nobody wants to have a kid or a husband if they can't fend for themselves. Like it would just be a burden. So now it's a burden to have a family there.
Because you can't work.
Yeah, so they wouldn't want to. They don't want to. Like I think it's like 25% of the people just have no interest in a relationship.
Yeah, and like 50% of them are like virgins, I believe, are the men.
Yeah, because it's become a burden now. Like, why would you want it if it's going to be such
Why
a
would
burden?
Why would you waste your time with the anxiety?
Yeah,
Especially
and
if you got if it's a largely post scarcity society.
it's crazy. Like, like people think it's bad here. It's worse out elsewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, like, even if you look at some of like the most popular corporations and companies that exist in our country today, like if you start out entry level position for them, did they think that you would still live in your mother's house in the basement, or you don't drive a car, or you don't need food, or do they want you to be on government assistance? And I know I'm speaking from perspective of living in Nassau, but like you cannot get by living on like $13.50 an hour.
No.
Yeah, no.
I work full time. All right. So when I started Valvoline, $13.50 an hour times 40, it's like roughly like $540 a week, and then you minus the taxes, you're at like $400 a week. So let's say in a cheap room you're paying $800 a month. And how are you like building your credit or doing anything? And it's like so many people in New York rely on public assistance. It's like, why don't they just increase the wage so people can live? It's like they want you to have to rely on them, on the man. The man wants you to be
on the dole.
Yeah. They want you to line up on the food line. For real.
Because it makes it so like they got you essentially, like they have you underneath the sort of heel. But there's an interesting set of reasons, I guess, why they don't just increase the minimum wage that I've heard. But like, I don't know, like it seems like most people are really want that to be a main point of contention. So I'd say like we should at least try it. And I think that they have tried it in some areas, and
I don't think they're doing it the right way though, because you said like, instead of giving us all these benefits, just raise the minimum wage, but they're still offering the benefits and with the giving of the minimum wage up, so things are still increasing anyway to compensate.
Yeah,
for both.
the prices of food and like certain services are increasing that like compensate for the increase in payment. But like that's a whole different conversation. I'd rather actually have with an economist if we can get one.
I don't know. It's just like when I was younger, I used to like kind of frown upon like, you know, like jobs that I thought were like low down kind of, and just be like, you know, well, those people kind of deserve, they deserve to make low money. But now that I've been in the position where like, you know, I work my ass off every day and work in a job that's, you know, not necessarily frowned upon, but people might view as like dirty and like you don't need a college education to have it. It's like no, like these people that wake up every day and go to work and they're trying to get by, like they do deserve to be able to go buy themselves a new piece of clothing and go food shopping for the family and drive a car.
Like, what would you do if they weren't there? You know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to ask you a question. You said you had like sort of spiritual axioms that you live by to help you move your life forward. Can you explain maybe some of them?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, I think that there's certain spiritual principles that that can help you as well, like the law of attraction. Like, I think if you have a real intention that you can set for yourself and you can make a move towards that, you don't really need to worry about how you're going to get there. Like, you could sit there pondering forever, oh my God, I'm stuck at Valvoline, I want to be an art broker. Like, I don't need to worry about how I'm getting from A to B. All I need to have in my head is that intention, and then I know if I work hard and show up and do the next right thing, that the universe opens the next door and you make the connection. It's kind of like I've been talking to my girlfriend about how I wanted to be on a podcast or do something like this for so long, and then me and you bump into each other. No, for real though, it's really how it works.
No, yeah, I know what you mean.
But you have to know when the opportunity presents itself. Like, you have to feel the universe opening the door. You don't just sit in your room and think of things and they pop up into your lap. Like, that's not how it works.
You gotta be out there.
Exactly. Like, you gotta be out there hitting the pavement, making the move, shaking the hands, and then the doors start to open. So it's like, am I gonna be an art broker tomorrow? No, but like, am I eventually gonna get there? Like, I know I will.
It's a good perspective. Like, I was talking to somebody, like, what's interesting is that some people have an interesting way to. They have an interesting way of spinning, I guess, certain moral principles. And like, what I was trying to say is that, like, sometimes you really just do gotta be like, okay, I'm not gonna let that happen. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just there's a weird sort of direction to everything that I feel as if you really can manipulate if you just say, like, I'm not gonna let this happen, or I'm gonna make this happen.
Negative intentions manifest too, and that's the scary thing. Is like, I feel like the universe is really indifferent to your feelings and doesn't care about good or bad. So if you're sitting there constantly thinking, my life is terrible, I'm not gonna make the rent, my job sucks, I hate it, things, the universe thinks that that's what you want, and it will continue to give you more of that. So like, if you're stuck in it and like you're depressed over your job, like I've been there, and like, you really just kind of got to be able to like look at whatever you do want to do and know that if you continue to show up at your crappy job, you might get to that better job one day.
Yeah, it's at least it helps you cling on to something, at least, even if it is kind of irrational. But that's the thing, spirituality is sort of irrational in a way.
I mean, I have a funny story for you, man. When I was a valet at Mercedes, there was a desk, and it was the corner cubicle right next to the assistant manager's office. And one day after work, I sat down in that desk, and this was when I was a valet, and I thought to myself, like, I wanted to be a service advisor, and it was a service advisor's desk at the time. And 3 years later, that was the desk that they gave me, like, as the tire and rim service advisor. So it's like, coincidence or not, I don't really think it was. I think it was like an intention that I had set that, that first year that I was there. And like, maybe I didn't realize it every day when I went to work, but like, that's what I was working towards.
Yeah. Yeah, and whether you're necessarily serious about it or not, if you have that conviction in your head, then things kind of seem to play out for you. Like, I always kind of wanted to do this podcast, and one day I was with Mike here, in the sort of cafe of our college, and Steve was there, and I was like, yo, we were just making jokes, like we were just like,
it's really
ripping
funny.
Ass on like some random topic.
I don't know if I ever said this, but I always did want to have like a show where I like it would be like a talk show. I'd be in like a suit, and like I would just interview. Shut up. I would just like interview random people that I meet in a way that I don't have a suit, but I basically came to
you
fruition.
You will.
Yeah, I could have a suit,
You could.
and then I could show up on the podcast. We could wear suits if we want.
You're basically guaranteed a suit at some point now, Mike.
Whatever the case is, like I said to myself, I want to interview people like a talk show, and that is what happens. Disregarding the freaking suit. The suit doesn't matter. A suit's just clothing.
But no, like I basically said, yeah, like we're going off what Mike said. I basically said, like, yo, Mike, let's do a podcast. And
It's funny because I don't even remember that.
I do. I do. And Steve was like, hey, you can do a pilot.
At barbecue, like the third time we met.
Oh, well.
Did we?
Yeah, no.
Well, no, okay.
It was the third time we ever.
Well, yeah, no, but
you pitched your idea and it was good.
No, yeah, what?
It was the third time we ever met at a barbecue. You pitched your idea to me, just saying, "Hey, this is something that might be cool." I'm like, "Oh, well, I have a place you can do it."
Okay.
So.
I don't remember that at all. I must have been.
There.
I don't remember that.
I was at the barbecue.
Now, what job were you working at the time?
I was and still am at IKEA.
Okay. But this is the end game for you. This is what you want to do.
Honestly, I mean, I wouldn't mind it because there's so many interesting things I've been told by people just having done this, and it's just like, And so many so much interesting feedback I've gotten, like, because I always walk away from this show like, Jesus Christ, that was the worst episode ever.
He does it every time, even though like people tell him like that was a good episode.
That's kind of good on there.
But people will come at me and be like, "Yo, I like what you're doing here. It's really interesting. You're discussing ideas, and we kind of like that." And I'm just like, you're delusional. No, but if I keep getting this feedback, like if people keep telling me like, this is really interesting, then I feel as if
Even
I
if it's
really
negative feedback, somebody watched your show.
Well, yeah, but like that's one point I'm trying to make. Like, it's largely good feedback.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, listen, I could do this, Like, I mean, but obviously, I'm gonna offer.
I mean, so do you think it's coincidence that you landed in the position that you're in, or do you think maybe it was a little law of attraction, manifestation, kind of spiritual? Because you asked about the spiritual principles. Yeah. So I really do think like when you can mix like those spiritual principles that we were just talking about with like a certain work ethic where you can show up on time, don't miss days, don't call in sick. Like, it's about being reliable.
No, yeah, you're right. No, listen, I'll tell you one thing. Like, people. There's an idea. I'll tell you two ideas. There's an idea in, I guess, socio sort of psychology where people believe that human interaction is predicated solely based on power. Like, it's all this is all power dynamics. Our conversation, we're not necessarily trying to one up over each other, but like it's all really a competition between either sexualities or races or classes or whatever. Like, it's all nothing but that. Now, that's a take, in my opinion. But honestly, what human beings really run off of, or at least that this is the most apparent to me, is reciprocity, man. Like, if you can reciprocate, like if we're talking about like back in caveman times, if you can like. If I can just be like, hey, cook some of your wolf or whatever in my fire and give me a piece because I'm letting you borrow some of my property, and you give me a piece, you actually keep to your word instead of clubbing me over the head. Then
everybody eats.
Yeah, everybody eats. Like, it's an interesting thing,
or is it just like, or just guys that like share similar intentions and like feel a similar struggle and like want to get there together?
Yeah. There's this guy who I really want to interview, and I hope he listens to this because I really want to interview.
Usually talk with people about Nietzsche, like in the Valvoline oil change bay.
Yeah.
I remember like we were talking philosophy.
No, but seriously, just to say this, like, I want to interview this guy. This guy I used to go to high school with called Nathan. I don't know his last name. Nathan. What? No, Nathan. He owns. He doesn't own, but he's a participant in this essentially this investment marketing sort of company, I think called iMarkets Live, I believe. And he basically does nothing but collaborate with people to promote like business and stuff like that. And I want to interview him, and I know he's from Long Island and he's not far from here. Like, if you're listening, please give me that interview, man, because I want to hear how you really came to what you're trying to do, because that's all he does, and he's making a killing out there, dude.
I really think that like there is a law of attraction, but I also think that people who succeed on this earth are the people who understand that there are opportunities almost everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think the people that don't succeed on this earth are blind to these opportunities.
Yeah.
They don't take risks. That's the thing. An opportunity could be anywhere if you take the risk, and a lot of people are afraid to do
buying
it.
Alibaba?
All right, you can work. All right, so you can work hard or you can work smart, right? So I work hard, and my friend Eric, my best friend, he works smart. So he has a business where he was basically working an IT job and thought to himself, I can do this. So he went to doctors, dentists, veterinarians, lawyers, offices, and now does their technical support and works remote from home. So he sleeps till noon every day and he works from home. He's making a good amount of money doing that. And then like Dollar Shave Club came out. He said, you know what? Like, I'm going to do this with car air fresheners. So he has like 700 subscribers now through like Instagram, does like 3 packs, 5 packs, 10 packs. Eric from Merrick, I'm plugging you. But,
nice.
But for real, it's like he's a self-made guy, and like I'm walking up and down the block 2.5 miles to Valvoline, and like it's just a matter of choices. It's like, what do you have? Like, what do you want to do? What's your vision for yourself? Like, our intentions are different. His intention's one thing, mine's another. So it's like, if your life is really difficult, you got to look at the thoughts that are going through your head on a daily basis and maybe change your way of thinking. And that goes for me too. It's like that negative train of thought could put you in such a difficult place, man.
Yeah.
And everything feels harder when you're thinking like that too, bro.
No, yeah, it really is. It expresses itself in your life in a way that's absolutely unprecedented. You know?
And everyone around you can feel your energy too.
Like everything
when you're
just
not
sours.
happy at work.
You give off like a
vibe.
like a vibe that like, oh, this person's pissed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hate being here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's easy to tell. It's just like body language. Like you have to be like I don't know, to really like look really happy but to be inside pissed. You have to be like a psycho,
yeah.
or you have to be desperately trying.
sociopath.
No, maybe not. Maybe also you're trying desperately for people to not have to see your angst and struggles.
People see
'Cause you
through
just-
it though, I think.
Yeah, they do.
Let me talk about my job for a second.
Wow.
I'm talking about myself.
SCP-3.
Shut up. But working at my job, it's like when I started out there, like it was. I was just acting like crazy autistic. Like I'm telling.
Probably shouldn't say
No,
that.
like let me explain. Like my sort of, I do act really awkward, but I only really started thinking I should probably get tested as soon as I started working at IKEA, and I'm serious. Like that was my first real job, and I was walking in there, and I'm just like, it's like watching a movie starring yourself, but you have no control over the character. It's just like, why did I do that?
All right, so I have really bad social anxiety myself.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with it my whole life, and it's gotten a lot better in the last few years. But like when I started off at Ace Hardware, I was a mess, dude. I completely can relate to that.
Yeah.
And especially like you were saying, feeling one way and having to act another. But somewhere along the line, I got comfortable with myself and comfortable dealing with customers, and that just like started to snowball. Like I said, like I went from being like a scared sales associate that was scared to talk to anyone to literally running hardware, electrical, keys, plumbing, paint, 5 cash registers, having a crew of 10 people within 6 months. So like if you can believe in yourself and like know that, you know, people like you, because people are gonna like you if you give off a good energy.
Yeah,
that's what it's all energy.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it was really awkward and kind of strange. Some people at first didn't really like me, but like I was coming across as really genuine,
I can relate to that because
and people really did end up really liking me. There's this one guy who I work with. His name is Ram, and I really also hope to get him on here as well. He's sort of Indian fellow, older man. He's
a sort of Indian fellow.
No, I said.
Oh, a sort of. Like, you mean like a type of Indian, you mean?
I did say sort of. No,
Yeah.
he's from India. I'm sorry about that, but he tells me all the time, like, oh man, as soon as you came in here, I knew you had something about you.
That reminds me, dude. I remember. This is funny. He's
He's an intuitive guy.
This is really funny. My first day at my job, and I'm still at the same job, and I was an idiot too. Like I felt awkward, and now I don't run the place, but I'm the eldest person there in terms of working there. Anyway, the first day I worked there, there's this little guy who was like, "You remind me of movie star. I think you'd be big movie star one day."
Oh my god!
And now I'm on a podcast, which is nowhere near that, but it's on like.
So he lied.
No, but I think it's like, I think it could be a stepping stone. Like he might have been putting me in a certain direction.
I'm starting to really get.
It freaks you out in a little, in a
yeah,
sense, because it is a lot of coincidences that might not really be coincidences.
No, yeah, I'm starting to.
I don't think those are.
I don't think they are
I think that like if you've ever read the book The Alchemist is really cool. It's about like paying attention to like
There's a lot of books I
signs
never
and
read.
the symbols and the omens that like pop up on your path like as you're manifesting your intention. So like when like little things like that happen and they feel like coincidence, it's like wait, like maybe I'm on the right. I think those are little cues that are telling you you're on your path, like you're on the right track to getting where you're headed.
You ever hear of The Secret? That book that everyone.
It was something.
An old friend gave that to me.
Never read it.
It's really bare bones entry level stuff about this stuff, but if you read deeper into it and like take away, it was kind of like what's the word, like fantastical, like kind of like naive. It was like a naive way of looking at the law of attraction, but it's like a stepping stone into actually understanding that there are opportunities around.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you can kind of drum up out of thin air too, like you said.
Like you could just like go up to somebody. It's like, oh, yo, what's up? Like you can make friends. Like that's like the best thing. And I remember Gary said that a few episodes ago when we had Gary here. He said like that people in India like like a lot of the way India works is based off of relationships and friendships.
That was an episode. I'm sorry, go on.
All right, so
Well, no, but it's true. It was not an episode.
tell me
ago.
if you guys think this is stupid. So,
yeah, it
like,
wasn't.
my girlfriend, she's been like, she wants a nice car, and we talk about getting a nice car. So the other day, I said to her, you know what? Let's go to BMW, and she was like, why? And I said, let's go in the dealership. Let's sit in the car you want. Put your hands on the wheel, touch it, see how it feels. We'll take it for a test drive. We'll sit with the salesman, and I'll BS him and act like we're gonna buy the car. She was like, why would we do that? And I was like, so we could sit down and like feel that something like that is possible for us. You know,
Move a bit closer
so we could like
to me.
so we could like sit down and feel like something like that is possible for us.
Yeah.
And like when we walked out of there, you know, the salesman like brought the manager over and like really thought we were gonna buy the car, and she was like, wow, that was crazy. And I was like, no, like that's for us. Like stuff like that, that's not outside of our realm of possibility. Like this stuff is for everybody if we choose it. Like we can have a BMW if we want. We can have anything we want. But that's the thing. I feel like you limit yourself in life. Tell yourself you can't have things.
Like you simulated yourself doing it. So like when the day comes, you'll feel that you've been there.
There's ways.
kind of.
There's multiple ways of tackling that sort of entrapment. You know, like some people like are stuck, and they just really they need some way to get out. And so oftentimes we sort of look to people who we elect and be like, why aren't you helping this person? Or some people just like look at it as totally something that's on them, and then try to push themselves like so far out of it. And like there's so many ways to sort of go about it, you know, like and I feel as if we're inching more towards the asking of our, I guess, higher ups what they can really do for us as opposed to what we can do for ourselves, which is, I mean, I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'm wondering like
That's a good point. I think people don't really look at themselves as being in control of their own destiny. They think it's the world or the universe.
Yeah, and
but you have like a piece of the universe like in you. You were born of this earth.
Yeah, what some really bad faith actors, I don't know if you can relate to this, what they'll do, in my opinion, this is somewhat in bad faith, is that they'll post a tragedy, like some woman who cleans up who's homeless, who cleans up like the resort, like helps clean up the resort in like Disney. She died unfortunately in her car from like some sort kind of, I think, asphyxiation or something like that.
Yikes.
Yeah, and like yeah, she died, and like people were just saying like, why is it that she has to live like this? And I'm just like, I'm thinking like, okay, who is this person? Why is she living like this? Like why? Like why does she? Yeah, why? No, I'm serious. Like I'm serious. Why is she in this situation? You know
she
what I mean?
likes it.
No, it's not so much that, and I'm not trying to say
She's
like
complacent, maybe.
no, I don't know. That's the point I'm trying to make. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, I don't want to be like, oh, maybe she deserved it. Like, no, that's not the point. It's like, why? Like, you know, like, what was the parts of her, like, what was her upbringing? Like, you know, I'm out of curiosity. Like, how did she end up being there? And maybe it could be something that's totally not her fault. But it's still something that you really should ask yourself. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, you can get stuck in like a self-limiting like thought loop, like a cycle where like, all right, so I've been stuck at my job and unhappy in my job, and like stuck in a room in Hempstead that I really didn't like for the last year. And I applied to an apartment in Astoria last month, and I didn't get the apartment. So I got super motivated to like get a new job and get a room. And within a week, I had an interview at Bloomingdale's, an interview at BMW, and I just got a new apartment. So it's like something that I thought I couldn't do for a year, literally within a week. It's like I had 2 new job opportunities and a new place to live. So it's like sometimes you just gotta make moves and do it.
Yeah, seriously. That's what this guy Nate I'm telling you about, he's always doing with people, like even the
And
young
thanks to
and the
my
old.
girlfriend for like making me do that.
Yeah, listen, Nate, please get on the show. I'm begging you, man.
That reminds me when I had taken my driving test 3 times. Some SpongeBob looking guy over here. The second time I took it, I drove on the wrong side of the road.
Oh my god.
I was doing perfectly fine. I made a left turn. The guy's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "What? You're on the wrong side of the road." And there's cars coming at me. I'm like,
Whoops.
"Well, what do I do? Well, get on the divider." I almost killed myself and this man just trying to do his job. But I was so pissed at myself that I screwed this up that I went to the gym and got a membership and started working out just to fill that void and to progress it. Like, if I'm not going to progress with getting my car, I'm going to progress with the gym. And then I ended up getting my license, and then the gym went bye. But still,
Yeah. Listen, this inward introspection, I told it harkens back somewhat to when we did stuff on Jesus Christ, which was a while ago. I feel as if people don't give those episodes enough credit. I feel like you don't give those episodes enough
They
credit.
were boring as. All right, you gotta listen. I've been in Catholic school for 13 years. It's the same thing for 13 years, and now you're gonna expect me to talk about
Okay,
it.
hold on, but let me just reiterate it in a way that doesn't put you to sleep, I guess, Mike. Like I told you about when we were doing Jesus Christ, I feel as if there was one story that I said that was actually really powerful in relation to it. Was Jesus essentially, he died on the cross for our sins. He basically, and what that means is that he gave us a way to become better people through hard work and suffering, essentially, by carrying your own responsibilities on your back in the form of the cross or whatever.
I'm sure that's what.
Yeah,
the
I was just gonna
symbolism
say,
was.
is this a literal story or a figurative story?
Oh, well, yeah, no.
Both
The
kind of.
story of Jesus Christ might have happened in some capacity, but what they try to relate it to a metaphorical whatever. Anyway, the point is that there's a guy in, I forget, one of the Scandinavian countries who, well, he was basically stuck in this community of people, like him and his friends, who were just whacked out on so many drugs. And what he did was that he worked so insanely hard and busted his ass to come clean. All of his friends got clean too. It's pretty.
Well, I think you'll notice a lot of time, and this goes for, you know, I see this at work as well. Like, let's say you're dealing with an irate customer, you can literally feel like their ego shooting through their head, and like they're mad.
Yeah.
Instead of lowering yourself to their level, if you're actually able to stay calm and like, you know, look them in the eye, and they'll actually raise themselves up to you rather than you stooping down to them. Like, you'll notice by the end of the interaction, they'll actually leave with a smile on their face if you don't let that energy catch on to you.
Yeah. But what? Yeah, like it is. Yeah, it's very similar to what I was trying to say. It's just like if you find yourself succeeding through your own efforts, through your own really like sort of almost desperate hard work, just busting your ass, it really does project onto other people. It projects into the world. It projects itself into the world, usually in the form of things like maybe money, but more than anything, if you go about it a particularly well-off way, you can really end up making a better life for people around you. Like this is one African American gentleman who's like converted 200 KKK members into not being that anymore, basically. And it like, dude, like, what kind of a mindset do you have to just see someone who is accepting of that ideology as still a human being that's worth like sort of redemption? You have to have a particular sort of mindset. Like, you have to have it in your mind that my suffering and the goal of my life isn't to limit my own suffering. It's actually to limit the world's suffering. You know what I mean? Like, well, how else would he want to do that besides believing that there was actually something transcendent in the idea of making those people not who they are anymore? Because I don't think he's necessarily doing it out of spite to, like, say the KKK. I think he's doing it because
I think he's doing it in a way to like
rectify
instead
human
of
suffering.
instead of fighting like with them. It's like if you can't beat them, join them. Like the opposite way, make them join you.
Yeah,
I think that's a good way of doing it, honestly.
it's just like what you were saying. Well, like sometimes they'll get back like down to your level if you give them that sort
Get
of
up to your
kindness.
I just noticed, like, when I was reactive with a customer rather than, you know, staying myself and being calm and cool and collected, like, then that problem would usually spiral into something worse than
it could have
it
been.
was. Exactly. Whereas if I stayed calm and cool, no problem, sir, I understand where you're coming from. You know, I know how you feel. Let me take care of you. You know, that person, you know, they shake your hand and they, you know, and that's just the way things work. And like, you know, in everything, not
It's
just
like,
at work.
You can't just look at customers as like these people who are pissed all the time and like want to do something against you. You just have to understand like they have bad days too, like and vice versa. Like you have to understand the people that you go to for a service are still people. Like a lot of people like define someone by their job, good or like a high end or a low end job. Define them by their job instead of them being a person. That's why like people think like it's. Like, let's say someone like me, I work at a supermarket. It'd be, like, impossible for me to be, like, friends with a lawyer, when that's not true if I just accept them and he accepts me as a person rather than our job.
It's funny you say that, because it is funny you say that, because I was making friends with a lawyer who did come in looking to buy a piece of furniture from just talking to him like a regular person.
Yeah, like, you don't have to, like... You don't have to brown nose or anything. Like,
Hold on,
there's some
Micah.
people-
You're trying to
Yeah,
say
you just talk to people like they're people, you know, and you got to understand too that people have anxieties about going into these public places, and they're on the defense. So it's almost like a matter of like being able to diffuse someone and find some common ground. Like my boss at work says, like I'm good at like treating a person like they're a person, but like keeping it professional. Like I know I might deal with like an 80-year-old woman a little differently than I'm going to deal with a 20-year-old dude. I might say, "What's up, bro? How's your day going?" Or, "Hey, ma'am, how are you today?" You know, like different things are going to make different people comfortable, but like I think if you can just treat like a client like they're a human being, and like let them know that like you know how it feels to walk into a store and feel awkward, like you were saying before, like at IKEA.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
you know, it's awkward to walk up to a sales associate at IKEA and ask for something for some people, and then you run, you know, and then you're feeling awkward because you're talking to a stranger, and it's like if you can both be cool with each other, but it's really up to you in the IKEA shirt to be the cool one. You know what I mean?
I get innumerable. When I say innumerable, I really do mean very frequent. Like I get frequently told that they want I tell people like, hey, listen. Like I never even bring it up. Like, hey, like if you really like, okay, hold on, let me sort of.
Did they tell your manager you did a good job?
Yeah. Like, hold on, let me frame this like a particular way. Like, I never go up to them and just be like, hey, you know, hey, if I did a good job, then you can tell my manager this or that or whatever. Like, I'm always told like, hey, is there anything I could do for you? And I'm just like, if you want, then you can tell my manager.
All right, so I do something weird personally. Like every time I deal with a sales associate that does a really good job for me, I ask them where their manager is, and I go up to the manager and say, hey, so-and-so really helped me out today and did a good job, because I know how powerful that could be for an employee. That's what got me my raise and promotions at Ace, and that's what got me promoted at Mercedes was, you know, clients that cared enough to go to my manager and say, hey man, Mike did a good job for me today, like this kid should you know, get hooked up.
Well, what I was gonna say though is that like I never make it the sort of focal point of the thing. Like of what I do, I always sort of put like doing a good job first, and like oftentimes I'll put it not sort of nonchalantly, like when they ask, I'm just like, you can do this, and I call over, you know, one of the people who I essentially work for, and they tell, like they just spell their guts out for me, and I'm just like, yeah, it's pretty good. But like, hold on, like, one thing I just want to say before I end off with my point is that like you do get rewards for it. And I got like this sort of pin that I can put on my tag or whatever. And if any of the people from IKEA are watching, like, don't tell any of the managers. I hope none of the managers find out. But I got a pin. I just looked at it and was like, hey, you did basically from the company, you did an amazing job, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Here's like a little brass pin, and I just ripped up the letter and threw the garbage. Like, no, I'm serious, because it's just like, because it's not because like, oh, I don't care about IKEA. It's like the point is that like I did a good job. It's all right.
So
I know.
you ripped up the letter saying
No, I know, because the point is that I don't need necessarily be told that. You know, like I know I did a good job. They know I did a good job because they were told. It's not so much even business as usual. It's just like I'm feeling fulfilled, and I don't need.
Somebody rip up this letter. That doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, you know what I'm trying to say, Mike?
Absolutely.
Like it's
100%.
Like I understand I did a good job, and like all I can really ask for is to be in more situations where I could serve people.
You know, and it's
better.
cool. It's cool that you know that if that's not, because the funny thing is, if your intention in the beginning of the interaction was to get an email sent or get a plug out of that person, it probably wouldn't happen, because you would come off as ingenuine, you know, disingenuous. But like you said, if you just come to somebody and you're coming from your heart and you're just doing a good job for them as an employee, like you're gonna move forward. You know, so there's really, you know, it sucks being in America and making these low wages, but like you have to take it upon yourself to like step up and know what you want out of life.
No matter where you are.
Exactly. There's no excuse for anybody.
Like, well, I'll tell you, there's these really hilarious videos of people in Africa basically trying to invent planes. Now, they're already invented, but they're trying to build these planes, and some of the crazy, like this one guy put a lawnmower engine on the front of like this freaking trailer, and he just rolled it off a cliff and just tumbles and explodes. I'm just like, like it's you know what it is?
Pioneers.
Yeah, exactly. They're obviously, like, we have F-15s and stuff like that, and they're trying to create like propeller planes, but it's like it's so interesting because they're actually trying really, really hard, and I know they're trying because like the whole village comes to watch the whole spectacle, and it's just like,
Yeah, but maybe that guy's dream in life is to fly, man, and he's never gonna get to fly anything other than that propeller plane. So
Yeah.
Will he die?
you gotta give it up to him.
no, seriously, like, you know.
he doesn't get to sit in an F-15, so his
Yeah, no.
lawnmower plane is his dream.
Yeah,
So he took it upon himself.
No,
That's
Was he
admirable.
smiling when he flew it?
well, actually,
I'm sure
no, it
he
never,
was.
no, it never flew.
Was he
that's the-
smiling when he tried to start it?
You know, he was smiling the whole time. He was
Well-
like running after it as it was tumbling down
He
the
has,
hill.
a, he has a
There you go.
dream.
Yeah.
He had a dream.
He had a
There you
dream.
go.
Yeah. The point, I mean, this was actually a lot more optimistic.
I
Than
think the
thought it
point
would
is
be.
if you're happy with while you're doing something, like you're gonna get gifts.
Like that's the
Yeah.
point of life: being happy doing what you're doing.
Yeah, this was a lot more optimistic, I'll admit, than I thought it would be. Like talking.
Good.
about
That's a
working
good
class.
thing, though.
No, but the point I'm trying to make is that like, I guess to sort of bring it to a close, we are really running out of time. Is that like to be working class in any situation, there's ways. What we really think, I think we covered is that there's ways you can go about it. You know what I mean? Like, you can improve your situation in so many ways. There's minute things that you could have done. Like this is a big talking point with Jordan Peterson. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but like,
Yeah, I have.
yeah, like, but one of the things that one of the people he talks about is the man who wrote the Gulag Archipelago. Can't remember his name.
Regardless.
Can you look it up, Steve? Actually, it's actually really important.
Look that up, Jamie.
Yeah, just look up the author of the Gulag Archipelago. But what he essentially said was, what he did was that he combed through his life like with a fine tooth comb.
Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
Yeah, it's Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I remember now. In case anybody wants to read it, is what I'm trying to say. But he combed through his life with a fine tooth comb instead of like asking himself why, like what other factors could have played into the part where he ended up in the Gulag in Soviet Russia. What did he do personally to figure out like why he ends up in the Gulag Archipelago? You know?
I think a lot of people end up in
Put it on himself.
I think a lot of people end up in these jobs that they hate and are so difficult for them because they don't know what they want to do. Or they're scared to tell people what their dream is, or to admit that, like, you know, maybe they wanted to be like a singer or an actor or whatever it is. But they think that that's not for them. They're not good enough to have that.
It really there's a way of going about. I'm sorry. Listen,
You
Mike, we
know?
actually got to wrap up.
Yeah, wrap it up.
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm saying we got to wrap up the show.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Wrap it up.
Oh yeah. Okay, so
But you can have whatever you want out of life, man. So
Yeah.
work hard and get it.
Have a dream.
well, it's important. Like I really do mean it. Like if you can really muster the strength to have something as seemingly intangible as a dream, but jeez, I was gonna say something, but yeah, it's over. Like it's an amazing show. Thank you so much, Mike, for being on, man.
Thanks, guys.
No problem, man.
I
It was a
appreciate
good
Thanks for
episode.
having me on.
Yeah. Oh, the boomer goggles are on.
Oh yeah,
All right, we're going down.
See you later.
that was a good episode.